next lecture by Michael Wamposzyc from Edinburgh, Napier University. He's going to talk about visualization of metadata in 2/3D digital cuneiform artifacts. Let's have a look how we can put it on here.
Thank you, Hendrik, for the introduction. And thank you very much for the organizers for the invitation to speak today. I would like to also thank the Creative Informatics Cluster from University of Edinburgh and Edinburgh Napier University, who make possible this presentation today, and generally kind of who are started the initial founding for this pilot project. So my presentation today will be structured in 3 parts. It's one of this presentation actually, which pretty much Henrik described before. In a way, it starts somewhere, and then on the way it gets a little bit in a different direction. Yes, it's one of those. It's one of these projects. I also actually, so I really pity that your slides are not here. I also probably should use one of your slides, work in progress, which I think pretty much would describe it, what's going on this kind of on this project. So basically, it's one of the projects which started looking at metadata in context of museum and linking it with the with the education, with the character of teaching. Basically, what is data, what is metadata. We started in a kind of very conventional way. So I'm also happy that that this was mentioned several times, the interest of bringing the information about Assyriology and generally about museum artifacts, maybe digital humanities as as a wider term, into the context of education. This is exactly one of this project which I want to start with. This would be first part of my presentation. Then I come into the second part, which is the pilot, the experimental work with the HoloLens on on visualization of tablets, and then would like, if we have time for this, to conclude with some of the lessons learned, observations, and as well happy to hear your feedback and discuss it. What are the potential ways of moving this project forward? Because as said, it's really work in progress. It started at the beginning of this academic year. So we started with this with these slides. Maybe I show it. Background: I'm teaching information design and data visualization, which is part of graphic design at Edinburgh Napier University. And our students in the modules I'm teaching are very much interested in visualization of data. So it's a little bit different maybe from the from the things we have been discussing until now. It's how to put it to the point. It wouldn't work if I give my students, essay to read with more than 3 or 5 pages. That's really not. That's not to say about the quality of education. That's really not the point here. It's just basically first, not the interest, not the type of students. They're interested in the visual way of assimilating and working through the problem. So it's a little bit maybe different starting point, which I want to point out. I use it a little bit like a background slideshows, but I mean, please have a look at the what's on the slides. So how we started this project, or what's the take here? The idea of using creative informatics as a starting point for students to reflect about data and about metadata. So what we're seeing here is sketchbooks, or we call it process books, from the second year students who, I would say, are rather working through the problem. So it's to use the, if we use the dichotomy between praxis and theory, which obviously, let's not go there right now, but if we tend to make the distinction, this would be probably closer to the idea of reflective practitioner from Donald Schoen, where we're starting at kind of at some point in education, we're starting at some point of kind of existing problem, obviously based on the theories, but then working through that problem, working through the kind of asking the question, trying to resolve through the practical implications, through working models, through kind of drafting things, we're coming closer and closer to kind of to asking more detailed questions. So here we have to do with students who started completely from scratch without any knowledge of Assyriology, with questions: where is Mesopotamia? Where do I find those artifacts in museum? And we took actually the museum. So the museum, which in Edinburgh is part of the National Museums of Scotland. National NMS, maybe in some slide would be used as a shortcut, is having a collection of about 250 cuneiform tablets. That's somewhere in the dungeon, probably underneath the building. What the students very quickly saw in the real life, in the kind of museum space, are 3 tablets, if I'm right, before. There's kind of some say there was 4th one, but couldn't find this one. So it's kind of one very big plate. That's exactly this one, which we have cursor, which kind of we see the fragment here. So it's kind of copy of a witness, kind of on the quite representative at the entrance in one of the bigger rooms, and several very, very small tablets, which are distributed actually between Egyptian sarcophagus, the kind of copy of mummy, and several other things which are getting more attention in the museum. So let's be honest, for students it was pretty much, yes, okay, tablets, what kind of tablets? Scottish tablets, by the way, that's again, so it's something different. So we're not talking about the kind of suites. I'm talking about the kind of Scottish tablets. This would be the collection of the kind of the artifacts. So students started looking in a kind of very, very own way. What is the collection? How to kind of make sense of the data and how to make sense of the metadata which exists. We link this with the CDLI archive as kind of a starting point. And the interesting part, which I kind of want to show here, was exactly this kind of this process through creating some of the kind of pictograms, for example here, trying to determine what can be visualized, how can it be visualized, and through this actually coming to quite interesting questions. What was known, how the kind of process of writing was structured, how was time measured. So things which actually are culturally relevant, and many of students at the beginning took completely for granted that, yes, obviously it was written with on paper, and this is just kind of more representative version of this. And I'm really not making fun here right now about it. It's kind of, it's just basically basic understanding of some of the things and taking for granted some of the things which, are maybe not necessarily clear from the longer perspective of time. I stay a little bit longer on this slide because it's particularly kind of, I find this quite interesting. Why cuneiform tablets? Why did we kind of, we could, in the end, we could look at different artifacts. Cuneiform tablets are particularly interesting from the perspective of kind of design and kind of typography, because it's having exactly this kind of very different approach to writing and to notational iconicity, as I would call it, because it's kind of 3D, 2D placings of the kind of between the representation of the flatness, which we mostly use in kind of in Western European culture for the kind of for script, and the 3D, which kind of gives completely different sense of operationality of this. What can we do with this type of artifacts? It brings several questions, which were the kind of difficulties which we started discussing. I really like this slide because without kind of much introduction, student immediately picked up the kind of the 2D, 3D character and tried to incorporate it into the process of creation of the pictogram. So if we usually, actually, the pictograms which we culturally, we grew up since, let's say, Otto Eicher as the key leader of bringing the form of pictograms for the Olympics. We used to the flat representation of this kind of graphic design. It itself, like photography, as most of the arts, will be aiming at training people of flattening the image, of getting from 3D representation actually flattening it into surface, putting this for the image. This operating with the artifacts like cuneiform is completely different set of questions, completely different perspective to the starting point to designing things, because we have this third dimensionality. And the question which appeared to be quite over and over within the research of students was like how to bring this third dimension, how to play this together with the 2D. So here from this initial sketches, I'm purposefully showing unedited pages from the from the students, different sketchbooks. We see this experimentation. We see this taking the 3D, the form observed in the on the tablets, and trying to make sense of this, and trying to incorporate this with the existing flatness, with several iterations of the visualization between 2D and 3D. Let's move forward with this. The next step. So this was sketchbooks of 2 of the students. The next step was basically visualizing this, creating infographic about the steps of own infographic. So a little bit meta reflection on this, what was created. So trying to bring on as information design, information graphic, the steps which have been necessary in process of creation. And this is interesting this was interesting for us because we didn't want to give the clear recipe for the students how to proceed with this, how to create the pictograms. That's easy. This can be done. Okay, get the grid, create the flatness. Here you go. So we we purposefully wanted to give room for experimentation and for ideas to develop it in a different way, particularly in the relation to to 3D design. So we found a couple of interesting things. I mean, never would consider putting as sources of inspiration Otto Eicher next to Keith Haring, but on the second look, yes, there is something about the visual grammar in the representation which makes sense as a source for inspiration for creating the pictograms. Here we have the grid system, so yes, this was used, but as well, I mean, cookies or dough as 3-dimensional experimentation for pictograms. So quite surprising tangents sometimes. Some of the visualization, that's another, so I'm showing the slides of from individual students. That's another one, maybe more clean, reflecting on, so my previous speaker was talking about the metadata and the importance, how to bring it, well, to education, how to extract it. So here was exactly this this idea of bringing, linking the idea of qualitative metadata, so let's say finding visualization of the author, and then asking the question, so who is the author actually within the cuneiforms? And the answer obviously was not the person who was doing it automatically wrong. I mean, not the person who was writing the text in the first place, but the person who was translating the text. So by doing this process, students came to few interesting observations and as well started questioning who is who within this, what are the periods of time. This was as well asked before, and how to find basically representation, the quantity within this quality. So linking the quantitative data within qualitative data and trying to find visualization for this. The interesting another part which we came across, so this was the was on this slide, the trying to find the pictogram for artificial intelligence, which is of the of the existing cuneiform. so trying a little bit curveball into this what they created. So no particular something which is nowadays. It's important for this what is happening now. Into 5 minutes. Oh my goodness, I better speed up. Okay, so that's those parts. Maybe kind of quicker, just to kind of to put it as a slideshow. Here again, artificial intelligence, some of the very different approaches basically to visualize this. I think this artificial intelligence was particularly good idea because it throws several kind of stylistic questions for this, how to integrate it with the existing data. And again, here, for example, several different images and kind of versions, iterations of this, how to link it. Here, so again, that it could be resolved in a very different ways. That's kind of combination of slides from different students. I really like this way of, again, trying to find the kind of quantitative representation within this qualitative metadata, and trying to just basically limit the amount of visual information, like here, period of time, or kind of inscription, depending on length. Okay, I'm skipping now to the second part of the presentation, which basically resulted from this initial part, which is focusing on the representation, kind of holographic representation of cuneiform tablets. So we started, that's kind of second part of the project, which is, we're just in development of this. We started with the few slides from this, few representations and photograms from the photogrammic representation from CBLI. We looked at the 250 tablets which are in the collection in Scotland, and took this enumeralish part, which kind of we took as a starting point, basically, with this what we intend to do. Here, the very kind of first idea generation to recreate it in virtual space, and I just play the animation. Hope this will be working. And that's the current prototype, which we started. We very quickly moved from the virtual reality as actually, interesting idea. We moved to augmented reality. Using HoloLens, we basically put these 3D models and of the tablets, and started making small collection of the of the tablet, interacting with them. So here we see the kind of scaling of the tablet. Here again, this idea of flatness of the kind of 2D line art next to the existing tablet.
Chair in the corner.
Sorry?
I like the chair.
Yeah, there was the assistant supposed to be sitting there actually, but was, to be honest, he was so bored. He started walking around because yes, it's work in progress. It was not working by the first time. Particularly as the kind of the instruction are given per voice. It wasn't reacting actually to my accent. I think this was the difficulty, which I cannot. Okay, so that's another kind of iteration of this, just to give you the beautiful view over Edinburgh, and the possibility to put it in the in context. So we took this three, obviously as limitation, but we took this 3 tablets as a starting point, as a kind of proof of concept. What can we do with this? How to edit it, basically how does it behave in different spaces? Does it work outside? Does it need to be within the... So that's my hand trying to grab. Sometimes it's not so precise, or but generally it's it gives the sense of of interaction. here's our technicians just repairing something on the kind of the access to the roof. So that's basically, again, the kind of the interesting part, which we want to which kind of developed in this pilot, is this kind of this possibility of bringing 2D kind of line art together with the tablet. And obviously, now hearing the kind of during the conference the different version as well of existing line art and kind of different versions of translation, I think that's kind of something which put together could be quite interesting to see in context, not just kind of a separate a flat image. Right, I move on with this because I'm aware that we're running out of time. So where are we now, or kind of what's the kind of current state? What are we preparing? So discussing the project with Shai, we came with several kind of new ideas, and we very happy to hear more what is needed, what can be implemented here, because the project is just starting. It's really kind of pilot. We're looking for possibilities to expand it, to integrate kind of several different things. Here, kind of steps created with Figma. So the previous kind of first visualization was with Blender. It's kind of should mention the tools. The kind of the holo visualizations make with HoloLens too. So they're kind of holograms which are then basically transported. That's the kind of steps which we trying to bring as exactly kind of 2D, 3D interface for interaction. So it's very simple gesture of kind of opening the hand, choosing the kind of the menu, and then kind of interacting with the parts. We're trying to bring exactly this is the kind of the current state for us, is bringing the kind of the 3D moment before it becomes the line art. Does this make sense? So the kind of the engraving, this kind of imprint, trying to bring this outside and then compare it together with the line art. That's one of the directions. The second one is again, thank you very much for support from Shai, kind of trying to bring it with the existing things which are developed here with the kind of Babylonian engine as the kind of automatic recognition. So here kind of additional windows which can open and basically provide the a translation of the text with the kind of different percentage of with the different models basically, and kind of in recognition of the symbols. So all of this can be basically as a separate windows within one application. The other direction, which we started as well, which we just starting right now, is bringing together the different fragments of line art. So the kind of the trying to take again Elias as kind of a starting point, taking the kind of the different fragments which we could find across different museums. So here Berlin, London, kind of obviously other museums, and trying to kind of to integrate it together as 3D model, which gives us the possibility of kind of metadata connected to this, where it's coming from, how is it translated, all of the kind of additional information, but then creating sort of composite of all of the kind of line art which bring it together, sort of kind of multi-dimensional text of the different witnesses. And I think I stop at this point. I'm getting the signal that I know at the time. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions for Michael? No?
Thank you. If we want to use the 3D model with the students, do we need special glasses?
Oh yes, the HoloLens. Are we talking about this things?
Yes.
This is HoloLens, yes. This requires, so this is, sorry, I skipped completely this part. We moved from virtual reality, which would be the kind of Oculus Rift. This was the first prototype. We promised to kind of to deliver, but we moved very quickly. We discovered that they have better toys in shop, which is exactly HoloLens, the second version, which is kind of product which creates augmentation for the kind of for existing. So it's really operational in the space.
You're aware of your environment, eh? It's that type, huh?
Sorry?
You're still aware of your environment.
Yes,
It's that
yes,
type.
yes. It's exactly. It's not kind of. This is not edited, so it's not kind of composite in the sense. It's really what you're seeing in the kind of in the moment. Maybe I show in the kind of.
Another one.
Yeah.
So you kind of you are standing in the kind of in this room, and you kind of you're aware of the room as well. So you're not the classic of kind of tipping over and being kind of sitting with the virtual reality and kind of feeling dizzy. It's actually not the case here because you really feel you're seeing the environment. You kind of still interact with people, but you can at the same time you can place the objects in space. And the interesting part, which is again this was learning curve for us, is this object stay in this place, which almost makes it as a small gallery for us. So it stays basically, if you place them, when you switch it off, it still remembers that the objects are there. So in a way, kind of students have been very interested in this as a use as a street art, kind of, which we have been maybe not necessarily as a kind of as the closest, but it is kind of opening for the kind of for widening participation or kind of for public engagement, bringing those kind of elements outside, out of the museum context of a kind of a box, trying to make it possible to interact with the things, placing them in a different way and kind of obviously experiencing it a little bit different than from recording 3 meter, oh that's my voice recording.
It could be for a treasure hunt. We could organize a treasure hunt at the university.
Yes!
Have the students find the Cuneiform tablet.
That's good. That's good idea. That's something which maybe we try to pitch to the museums or kind of that's exactly as said. This is just really pilot project. We work on a couple of months on this. We hope to kind of to develop it further and exactly to kind of to take on board the National Museum of Scotland and kind of other museums and kind of collaborate on possibilities of kind of bringing the artifacts a little bit outside of the museum, kind of changing the context for interacting with the collections.
Okay, shall we close this session? Okay, we are supposed to reconvene
In an hour.
in an hour. Yes.
Yeah.
2:30.